Hi, I'm Allie Howell, Trial and Appellate Counsel with the Upper Midwest Law Center. Welcome to Courtside with UMLC. This week I'm joined by Bob and Cynthia Cajune, two of our lead plaintiffs in our Cajune versus Independent School District 194 case. Bob and Cynthia, could you briefly introduce yourselves for the audience?
Hi, Allie. This is Cynthia Cajune and my husband, Bob Cajune. We are parents in Lakeville, and with the help from Upper Midwest Law Center, we were able to file a lawsuit and eventually win in the Eighth Circuit and have a settlement and a victory towards the end against the school district's discriminatory posters of their Black Lives Matter posters that they created and would not allow other viewpoint made posters. So that's why we were here, and with the help from Upper Midwest Law Center, we got a victory.
Great. Well, let's go back to 2020 when this all really started and talk a little bit about kind of what first began the school's decision to allow, these are Lakeville Public Schools allowing certain Black Lives Matter posters to be hung up in the school. So can you kind of walk us through sort of how that began and what it was like at the time in Lakeville Public Schools?
Well, in the beginning, I think mostly what we were noticing is more and more of the social justice or CRT wording to be pushed more and more. And we're kind of getting a little concerned about that because they kept changing the name. It was like, we can't have CRT. It's critical race theory. It's got to be, equity or diversity, equity, inclusion, or what is the other one? Social emotional learning. So anytime I saw social in front of anything like social justice or whatever, I was picking up that this is a socialist Marxist movement and it's not American. And as a veteran, I was like, I swore to upheld the Constitution of the United States, so we started speaking and at school board meetings, and then more people stood up with us and started pushing back on some of this social justice, CRT or whatever they want to call it today. And then they started moving towards the poster series. Black Lives Matter, putting Black Lives Matter up in the classrooms. But when we pushed back on that, our superintendent at the time actually did uphold their rules and said that, Black Lives Matter is political and you shouldn't have it in the classroom. And we wanted neutrality. And we thought it was done until they hired firms to come in and push the BLM movement in the schools.
Yeah, so the district basically all of a sudden changed positions after saying, as you said, that announced that we're not going to allow Black Lives Matter posters in schools because that message is political in nature and political messages aren't allowed to be hung up within the schools. And then all of a sudden the school basically seemed to change its mind or decide it didn't care about what it previously said and authorize the posters. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And when they announced this poster series, we were shocked of the slogan Black Lives Matter. And in fine print, we support the social justice movement. And it started,
and the statement that it represents, So, and at that time, Minneapolis was burning down, and they were trying to, change it that, this is a peaceful movement. It's just a peaceful protest as Minneapolis is burning down. And one of my friends lives in Richfield, and he's getting like ambers falling down in his house, and he was worried about his house burning down from Minneapolis burning down. So it was crazy time.
When these started appearing in our kids' schools, that became very personal. My son was in preschool in the Lakeville School District preschool building at that time, and then our oldest was in middle school. And to have these Black Lives Matter posters up there, I don't want my kids to know what that slogan represents. They have no business to have politics in school. And the whole point of their policy 535 is neutrality to political mottos and slogans and posters and campaigns. And they were clearly violating their own policy.
Right, and it's also true that the school district, in kind of keeping with that tradition of violating its policy, then proceeded to refuse to allow any contrary viewpoints or different posters to go up. And I believe both of you reached out and asked about putting up other posters and were turned down.
Yeah, I emailed the director of the DEI or equity department or whatever they changed it to, and asked if we could put up All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter posters too, because, you know, I've had family members that were police officers, and of course me being a veteran, and then our family is a very blended family. We have pretty much all races in my family. I'm a Native American, and I have, you know, my nephew is half black, and my stepson is black, quarter black too. So, yeah, every life matters. It's not just one. And we were appalled by them pushing a narrative that basically segregated kids again by color and race. And I was just appalled by that whole process.
And then you emailed asking for other viewpoints. Go into that, the All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, and the school district flat out refused.
No, they flat out said that All Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter were political.
And go against the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yeah.
Which that in itself is political.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you think, you know, the school really basically, based on that email that they sent to you of, you know, we agree with Black Lives Matter, but we don't agree with All Lives Matter or Blue Lives Matter. And so we're going to reject those viewpoints in the school is really taking a stance on a political issue. And what did you think were some of the ramifications of that as parents and for your children in the school district when you see the school taking a very firm stance on one side of a pretty contested political issue at the time?
Yeah, we started seeing our own kids questioning, why do only Black lives matter? What about all the other races? Asian, so Asian hate was going on to, what about the Asians? Because I'm half Japanese, so my son was questioning that. Like, what about the other ethnic groups? So it just segregated our kids up, and the white kids were questioning, well, what about us? We don't matter. And that was the intent, I believe, was to split everyone up and create chaos.
Yeah, it's a movement of division. I think even BLM, before they changed their website numerous times to hide their Marxist values, wanted to, destroy the family, and the family unit was one of their stated goals. And, for us as parents, I couldn't stand down and just let them continue to destroy not only our family, but friends of ours that also go to school. So, no matter what their race was.
Right. Now, another thing I'd like to talk about with this case is really, as you mentioned, Cynthia, we got a great decision out of the Eighth Circuit. In your case, we initially lost at the motion to dismiss the Federal District of Minnesota, and we were able to appeal and win at the Eighth Circuit, and that really came down to an interesting doctrine called government speech. And so after we sued for a violation of the First Amendment, viewpoint discrimination, because only Black Lives Matter posters were allowed in schools, and as you said, Bob, you sent an email asking hey, can I bring these other posters? And we're told, no, your viewpoint isn't welcome. And what the school district argued in response to our First Amendment case was that, well, that we are allowed as the government to make our own speech, called government speech, where we don't have to be viewpoint neutral like the First Amendment usually requires. We can take a side as long as I'm speaking on behalf of the government entity. And sort of the easy example is, at the Minnesota State Capitol, they can hang up a Vikings flag, and they don't have to hang up a Detroit Lions flag, even though I may like to see the Detroit Lions flag. They don't have to be neutral there. And so that's what the school district argued. They won at the district court, and eventually at the Eighth Circuit, we were able to convince the court that no, this really wasn't government speech. What this was a lot of different private activists on the other side, taking the alternate viewpoint on this political issue, were able to basically convince the school district to open the doors for them to speak, but not to allow others to speak. And so it wasn't government speech. It was the government giving space for one activist group to speak. And at least for me, when working on the case, one area where I really saw that clearly was in rewatching some of the public videos from the early school board hearings, where this was kind of debated in fall of 2020 and spring of 2021. And so I wanted to hear a little bit more from both of you about what it was like going to those school board hearings and meetings and presenting your point of view. I know there were others that stood with you and presented that point of view as well, but it seemed like there was quite a lot of people on the other side too, and those meetings got a bit contentious. So I think people would like to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, they got a little bit more than contentious at times. I mean, they were obviously bringing people in from outside the district that were activists, and it was clearly, by design to keep us out of us or the rest of the people that were trying to be on the case anonymously for fear of being fired and losing their livelihoods too, from speaking out. So they would take up all the speaking spots, so they would block the doors from us trying to go into a public meeting. I kind of seen the same kind of a thing during the BLM riots where, the Antifa people would be holding up umbrellas and stuff. Well, they would pretty much get there, and it's like the combinations of all these different people and these groups coming together to push this agenda. It was like teacher union people. It was we had this group called Roar, and that was like a local activist group in our district, and then other groups from around the cities coming down to take up all the speaking spots. So our point of view was canceled out because we were effective at presenting that this is not right, this is wrong. You're basically bringing back segregation again by saying only one race matters in our schools, and it's not inclusive. It's very discriminatory and racist. Yeah. So they tried to call us racist. They tried to call us all kinds of different names and physically assault us and threaten us. And at one point they tried to just go after my wife because they were kind of afraid of me because I didn't back down or show fear at all,
And then eventually we had to pull our kids because when we started our lawsuit, our name was out there, obviously. So our oldest was targeted because of having our name, and we had to pull them out of the public school system. It just got to be too bad. Yeah. It's got to be bad. Hostile, bullying just got way beyond,
Yeah, they just couldn't handle the truth, and they couldn't handle the fact that, somebody was actually pushing back on their socialist agenda, basically. Being Marxist, like, you got to shut down your opposition. It's like, what rules for radicals? It's just, and I I couldn't allow it to continue. I needed to defend my family.
Yeah.
And
take a stand and state, our kids are watching us, so we wanted to do the right thing by taking a stand and saying, no, this is not okay. You guys are being discriminatory, and very racist yourselves. No, this is not okay. These are not the values we instill in our kids. And the matter of the fact, we wanted to also be an example for other parents in the school district to take a stand.
Yeah, because once we started publicly speaking at these school board meetings, other parents got the courage to come and stand up with us and speak out as well. And that alone was like, great, we're not alone in this. There's a lot of people that believe in the same thing, that schools shouldn't be indoctrination centers. They should be places where you learn how to decipher what's right. Teach right and wrong. And I remember, do unto others as you'd have done to yourself. But how can you do that? Golden rule, if it's just no, this way or the highway, or we're going to shut you down and cancel you and get rid of you. And it's just not right. And it's not a healthy environment for education. And we can see that now in the numbers. Half the kids can't read and write or do math at grade level. So it's just appalling how much time they put into this social justice garbage instead of teaching or educating. And yeah.
Right. And I think Cynthia, you made a good point, mentioning, your kids are watching, and I think you see when watching some of what was going on in those school board meetings, and just the really contentious, is as you said, an understated word for the situation, environment that you were speaking in. And then you see how that affects the learning environment for children too, and how it affected your kids. And I think it's safe to say that kids didn't come up with that on their own, and that was learned on the other side, and really shows why it's important to keep this material out of the classroom in the first place, so kids can really focus on learning. And as we do know, reading and math and performance in Minnesota is way down, and so it's more important now than ever to make school again and focus on education. So why don't we, hopefully in a brighter note, then talk a little bit about the settlement in this case and what it means for Lakeville area schools.
Yeah, so with the help from Upper Midwest Law Center and their legal team, with you, Allie, too, you were majorly part of this lawsuit. We appealed into the 8th Circuit, and we got victory, which set a precedent, not just statewide, but nationally. And we are so honored to have a win in this First Amendment lawsuit of viewpoint discrimination. And the 8th Circuit saw that. And with their opinion, they're spot on. It was viewpoint discrimination. So with that huge victory, we, with the help from Upper Midwest Law Center and the opposing party, we were able to settle, given the settlement payment was not nearly covered the attorney fees, but, it was a decent amount to cover a portion of the attorney fees.
And onto that settlement too, it was, a lot of it was behind the scenes, but we, in our little movement of getting people to step up, we changed the school board's party affiliate, even though they're supposed to be nonpartisan, but they came around to, let's get back to educating our children and not allowing this viewpoint discrimination or other social justice garbage, and focus on education again. And that's what we wanted in the first place. We wanted to show that every single child matters, and their education matters. And that was very important to us.
Yep. So the posters are down.
They are down.
They
Yes.
are down.
Yep.
Thank
Actually, the whole poster series were voted to be taken down, and that was, part of the settlement for the poster series to be taken down. So victory in that, and for schools to just be schools again and get back to academics and be neutral on politics. Like, politics should not be in our schools. History, civics, you lay out, a teacher's job is to lay out all different religions and viewpoints and history, not just do one viewpoint or one having one agenda. You need various
critical thinking skills,
yes,
which are very lacking in today's society.
So that's what I hope our lawsuit will help with, is for neutrality and no viewpoint discrimination, because our First Amendment rights were violated.
Yeah, and I hope that too, like, that civil education stuff would come back and people actually start learning their constitutional rights again, because, just because entity calling themselves the government doesn't mean that they could take away your opinions or your voice. And that's just because they say so,
Right.
And for our kids to feel safe in our schools and not be targeted because you're one color or you believe in one political ideology, that all opinions matter and are welcome. And it's just not one-sided. Yeah, for our kids to feel safe. And they can just learn.
Right. So what advice do you both have for parents that may find themselves in a similar situation or a different one where they feel like their children's rights or their own rights as parents are being violated in the public school setting?
Well, my big thing is I mentioned before, is you're not alone in this thing, because other children are also being affected, and when you step up to speak out, other people are going to join you, and we got lifelong friends from this whole thing, because they stood up with us, and another thing is you can't be afraid, because once you do get on a lawsuit named, you got extra protections. People don't really realize that, but you do have extra protections. So I want to encourage others that if they are having that same situation, you're not alone, and you will be protected a lot more than you would be on your own.
And Upper Midwest Law Center has been so wonderful working with us and their legal team, and working with us along the whole process. So without Upper Midwest Law Center, we wouldn't have come this far with this victory without them. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, you're welcome. And I will briefly add at the end here that now that legal team does include Cynthia, who as her lawsuit was wrapping up, actually joined us as a full-time paralegal, now part of our legal team, and has been a great addition to the team here. Is there anything else you both would like to add about your case?
Well, being a faithful person as a Christian, having that our faith community around us too, meant the world, because it was very difficult and trying for us going through this with all the different battles with the different BLM activists and stuff. And, at times it was tough, but we were able to lean on our faith community friends and family and get prayer, and knowing that whatever happens, it was for His glory, and that meant a lot to us. And I hope that other people are going to be willing to step up to fight those fights as well when they run into it, because you should be able to pray wherever you want to pray and not be blocked by by the government.
Well, yes, and thank you for that, and for really standing up and making a big difference both in your local school district, schools across Minnesota, and as you said, across this now nationwide precedent. Um, in the Eighth Circuit, that could be it's binding precedent in the Eighth Circuit and precedent that courts across the nation will look for in deciding similar cases in the future. And so that really makes a huge difference for the First Amendment going forward. And you both put your names on it and stood up for it for your own children. And it was an honor to be able to work on your case. And I'm glad we were able to get a good result in that case as well with this final settlement and the posters coming down. So with that, I think that's all we have on this episode of Courtside with the Upper Midwest Law Center. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.